Right. Welcome everyone to our discussion panel about starting your journey in Polkadot and Substrate ecosystems. By the way, aren't we supposed to call it Polkadot SDK already instead of Substrate? Yeah. So on the panel we will have Xylo from Ordum, Ayusha from Pactreon. Hopefully I got the name right. And Sacha from Parity, who will be moderating the discussion. So welcome guys, and stage is yours.
Awesome, thank you so much. Yeah, welcome everyone. How's it going? Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, it's like sort of a little faint, but I'm sure as people start populating the room and the door is closed, we can get a cozy space where everyone can hear each other. Super stoked to have my two panelists here and to kick things off. So my name is Sacha. I work in the developer relations team at Parity. And this panel really is about like how to start building in this space, right? Like where to start, right? And what I'm stoked about is to share the stories of Ayushi and Xylo, who both have been building in this space in like their own interesting ways. So to introduce Ayushi real quick, she's actually been participating in Polkadot hackathons, and hopefully she'll share her story a little more, go a little deeper. Xylo is the founder of a UX company, and she'll share a little bit. And just to kind of kick things off, the format that I really want to go for here is to have you guys ask more questions throughout the panel. It'll be pretty boring if we just like talk for the whole time and not engage, right? And so we'll kind of section things into three main categories, kind of kicking things off with their stories. And then about 10 minutes, then you guys can maybe share your stories and maybe comment, and I'll take a few questions. And then the second section, more on what tips that might be recommended for people that are new to the Polkadot ecosystem, maybe developers that come from different backgrounds, and again, stories, questions from you guys. And then towards the end, like community and sort of opportunities is the third category that I'd really want to touch. So without further ado, let's kick things off. Ayushi, tell us like what got you started in the Polkadot ecosystem, and I think what's interesting is like really what brought you here today. Like, you know, you've come all the way from Delhi. So can you share with us like your background? Let's start with just like your background and what got you interested in the ecosystem.
So hello everyone, I am Ayushi. I'm a software developer at Pactreon. So Pactreon is the Indian entity, and we have a parent company called Few. It's Canadian entity. So I want to share my journey and my story, like how I ended up here in front of you guys. So the story started with a problem. The problem was for an immigrant who travels from their home country to the other country, what problem does he or she faces? The problem is who will take care of the family of that person after them. So there was a person.
So after the death of a family, who would take care of
yes.
family member, yeah.
So there was a person who decided to mentor those students in India. And in return, those students will take care of the family members of that person, right? So that's how the instant family grew, and ecosystem grew to 20 people. The students came to that instant family. They got placed at a very good position and went to nice places. And the instant family chain came into inception first before the blockchain.
Community first, like this is what really I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome, yeah.
So if I talk about myself, in my family, by being a female child, I never had the opportunity to grow as my male siblings. So this person, it took effort and guidance from that person to be mentored, right? And that's how I ended up in blockchain. Because, there is a barrier to entry, and barrier to entry is lower in emerging technologies than the ecosystem. So that's how I ended up in blockchain, and I did a course from Cornell University.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So your background is in computer science, studied something
Yes.
similar
Yes.
to that. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I did graduate.
And then, okay, cool. So let's hold that kind of thought. Like, community is so important, and having your own community in your local environment, I think,
Right.
is really what I'm hearing here, and what kickstarted you, and eventually brought you here today. Skipping a bunch of things, I just want to bring it over to Xylo too, which is like, same question. Like, what kind of how did you end up here, really?
Yeah, so just a minor correction. Ordum is not a UX company. It's a public good grant aggregator. And we mainly address the pain points of grants and applying for grants, simplifying it and aggregating data in order to make different types of decisions and easily find access to funding, because the hypothesis is we're going to get closer to mass adoption if we finance parts of infrastructure or anything else that's needed in order to make it easier for other people to build in the ecosystems. But
but you do have a UX background. I didn't get that completely wrong, right?
No.
So that's from what I understood in our chats on Monday night. By the way, we had the Polkadot Heroes program launched. We had a meetup in the Parity office. It was awesome. That's sort of like your interest. You're sort of you're a builder, but from that perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe elaborate on that.
Yeah. So I primarily focus on the UX because I personally have a art and design background. So I started in the ecosystem as a freelance UI designer, bumping from like different NFT companies. And then at some point eventually quitting my previous job in hologram production. But I mainly ended up in blockchain because of the ethos, because it provided an alternative to all of the things Web2 for artists, for example, because we were, as artists, forced, especially photographers, we were forced to use Instagram, otherwise, well, you're irrelevant.
Totally.
So that kind of what really got me interested in technology to begin with, but also blockchain. Obviously, I'm not a developer, so I don't know advanced cryptography or anything, but I find it fascinating as something that's just a need for everyone, because privacy is a human right.
Right. Okay, so really like your first touch points into the Polkadot ecosystem was like just discovering all this technology from like a desire to want to build something meaningful, purposeful, and like that's in a nutshell kind of what
Yeah. So
here.
yeah, exactly. So one of the best things about freelancing and burning out from doing 10 projects at once is that you get to explore the entire candy store of an ecosystem and then see what chocolates you want to stick with.
Right.
And not overconsume them so that you don't get diabetes and die, basically, which is the equivalent of burnout. But I think that anybody that comes to this ecosystem or any other ecosystem should just try things out. You don't know if you like somebody or like something or dislike something unless you give it a shot and like learn about it.
Absolutely. So I kind of want to wrap like this kind of first part up with like, what are your tips for encouraging other people that might be curious and like, learning about the Polkadot ecosystem, learning about the things that you can build here? Maybe I'll bring that question to you. You can elaborate a little bit. What tips can you give to people?
Like how can they start it with Polkadot? That's what you're asking?
Asking, you're here today at Sub0, which is really exciting, by the way. I mean, I usually flew from Delhi to be here. And she's also participated in the Polkadot Relayers program.
Yeah. So what happened was one of our team members, he went to the Decoded conference in Denmark, happened this year, and he won hackathon there. And during that, we met Zeitgeist people, and we participated in Polkadot Relayers incubator program through them, and now we are building a gaming platform. It's a gaming SDK called Zexify. The name comes from Gamify plus Sexify. So yeah, it's basically a Unity-based games building on top of Zeitgeist parachain. It's for prediction market. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's
Super cool.
That's it. Yeah.
Tips on what the entry points that you could probably inspire other people interested in our ecosystem.
I mean, it might sound a bit cheesy, but I think it's always important to have this like childish need for exploration and having fun and just trying everything out and experimenting, because when we experiment, we kind of get to the big breakthroughs and stuff. But in terms of actually actual steps with starting, I would suggest just reading things about Polkadot or any parachain that you're interested, reading the documentation. If reading is not your thing, then watching videos, and anything that's your preferred way of consuming information, really.
Totally.
But also everybody in this ecosystem is pretty welcoming. If there's a project or a parachain that somebody's interested in, just shoot them a DM, share your ideas, ask them what they think about your ideas, try to validate your ideas, and ask them for suggestions, because even if the project you're talking to is not necessarily the best tech to work with, these people are going to tell you that. And they might guide you to the right place, because there's a lot, and the more you talk to people and ask questions, the closer you're going to get to your goal.
Yeah, one of the things that I would say is this human element in the Polkadot ecosystem, where we're connecting humans. Like on-chain governance really is on the protocol level, achieving treasury spending, for instance, but it's about humans. It's about engagement, and in that sense, anyone coming here should hopefully feels welcomed, right? And I think you're both testaments to having experienced that. So I want to hear from the audience, if there's any questions, and anything maybe someone wants to add to what we're talking about. I think in the room there's a lot of experienced builders too. You might have some insight on how you started, maybe and maybe ask questions to Ayushi, who is here, and also Xylo from their experience, different backgrounds. I think it's super interesting. Dennis, you can say the question. I'll repeat it. Yeah. Oh, sweet. We have a microphone for you. Yeah, awesome.
So what the ecosystem lacks right now is the actually candy store, the place where the new builders could come and research whatever your ecosystem provides, all the tools from all of the projects and DAOs and parachains, whatever they already are providing, in order to choose something to build on and not to build from scratch. And it has to be some centralized guidance into the ecosystem. That's important. Yeah. Other ecosystems, they do have it. Not all of them, but it's super important for us to have it.
So so you're taking the analogy Sacha said about the candy store, and you're saying, what's missing is that candy store, right? Yep. It's things are very disparate, and I've also been experiencing that firsthand at Parity, where we have all this tech. And it's hard to sort of get people point them in the right direction, right? But what would you comment to that?
I agree that we definitely need a centralized space for all of this information, for all the parachains, for all of the apps, for all of the projects, because even when we were conducting research, this is very difficult to dig through. And yeah, I absolutely agree that there should be one centralized candy market, instead of having a bunch of them everywhere.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, thanks for that comment. And if anyone has anything to add to that, yeah, Dudley.
I guess this is a bit of a call to action, because I don't think it's down to Parity to build this candy store, right? It's down to the ecosystem to help with building the candy store. I mean, I get it. We do have candy, and it's good. We just need to just make the store. And I think maybe just leaving it on the shoulders of others maybe be problematic. And I think, again, I'm not suggesting that's what you're suggesting. We're not leaving it to Parity to do, but I'm saying maybe this is a call to action. Hey, I mean, there's a lot of builders here. How long would it take to throw together a candy store? I don't know. Let's not physically build one.
Absolutely. I just also want to add that there are tools, right? And we're going to talk about other platforms that exist, and just after wrapping this section up. But
I wanted to reply. Sorry.
One more, yeah. The response to Dudley.
I definitely can agree with that, but also it's important to not to centralize to not to have everything centralized in Parity, because it's already the kind of a problem, like a
Absolutely.
bottleneck, whatever, and we don't have to ask them to do anything that is not related to the core development, right? And for that, it's easy. We have treasuries, we have foundations, we have like bounties, and like.
There's a lot happening in the ecosystem, and it should
Exactly.
come from the ecosystem.
Exactly.
So
We have
for those that
developer
maybe aren't
shops.
familiar, like Dudley mentioned, like things should not come from Parity Technologies. Parity is the company I work with, and we are literally building Polkadot as infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the beauty of everyone in the room, the beauty of how you guys are here is that you're building your own applications, your own services. I think what we're highlighting here is that there's a service that is lacking in our ecosystem to help people enter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your analogy with this candy store, by the way, you said like the trick is not to get diabetes because there's too much candy to choose from, right? Like, and I think I resonate. It's like it's overwhelming often, and there's no great solution right now. But kind of in spirit of wrapping us up, Dennis, you want to add one comment?
Yes. Just another tip for like starting the journey in the ecosystem. There are developer shops that are just waiting for anyone to, give them a task and pay them from this bounty, from this like proposal, whatever. And there are like developer shops, front-end shops, design shops, DevOps shops that are running validators and collators for you. And there can be event shops and marketing shops that would promote for you instead of you having your own marketing, instead of you having your own event agency, whatever. And it all can be like a DAO. It all can be decentralized in a way, in a new way of hiring people and paying people.
Yeah, I think, so kind of moving on, like I think this second piece here really is where I want to touch on, and I'm sure you'll still have more comments, like guys, again, and please feel free to engage. Like if you do have a question that on something we're talking about, I want this to be like open to you guys too, because you probably have interesting insight to share. We talked about like, okay, so entering this ecosystem, and I see all the parachains, all the services that they're building, all the things that I could be building, right? Like, what is the best way to start and to start learning about these things? Maybe you can share a little bit about your experience, your entry point, John.
Okay, so my personal experience.
How did you navigate all of that stuff without burning out?
Well, so first I just started reading a lot of white papers, which is maybe a bit silly for somebody that's non-technical, but that's kind of how my thing started. Like, I don't like watching videos and stuff. I like cold hard text and facts and things. So my personal suggestion would be to read quite a bit, like inform yourself as mentioned, see what sparks your interest, and also, as mentioned previously, reach out to projects to direct you. But from my personal experience, the best thing was going to places like, I started with going to Polkadot.js, opening the drop-down menu, and then reading about every single parachain that was on there.
Yeah.
Then also reading about some of the projects that were built on them. That was the only way that I could kind of have all this information. But then somebody might know already somehow what they want to do. Maybe they just want to build a DID, right? And then they're just going to find which chain is best for that, which is like Kilt, right? But then you might want to have an idea that's based on multiple parachains.
Right.
And then maybe you have to look at all of them, because your DApp will sit in our case, our DApp will utilize multiple parachains. So then you need to kind of
Sift through.
yeah, you need to take your blocks and then see which ones you need to relate with in order to decide on your like tech stack, or even to decide on your team, or to decide on your finances and so on.
So,
actually, I want to.
Sasha, I would like to add something. Yeah, that's true. There are multiple offerings in this ecosystem. And what my suggestion would be, or how I started, or my team started, is like the use case matters the most. Like, one should be clear what to build and what is the requirement, right? There is a documentation, everything is there. It's very vast, So at the end of the day, what you are going to build and what's the use case matters the most. That's what I think. you know. For example, the Substrate framework, it's written in Rust, right? Polkadot supports Rust language, so it's clear that one should know about Rust programming language, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I see it. This thing.
Yeah. I mean, like, start at what you're interested in. Like, what's your kind of, maybe you want to build something, maybe you just want to learn,
Yes,
right?
right.
And so like, and I'm sure you have interesting insight from your perspective of like, what are the things that you learned and stuff. I do want to just dig in a little deeper with Xylo, because I think your story is interesting because you have a vision of this product. Talk to me about like that product and tell the audience a little more and sort of what led you to choosing the different technologies that power what you're building right now.
So I kind of just, through freelancing with a lot of projects, I got annoyed by things. And I wanted to resolve certain things because we kind of have this, like, there's that Homer Simpson meme where he's like standing like this and like everything's, his fat is like in the bag tied with like clips and thingies. But basically from the outside, Web3 is this promise of like this decentralized network where you own your data and stuff. And then like on the back side of that front is like everybody's using Gmail, right? So I kind of got annoyed by things like that. And initially I wanted to build an all-in-one DAO tooling app, but that was a little bit too much. And then it had to kind of be narrowed down into one single kind of element. But I also, for an example, heard at a crypto members club in London, somebody talking about the same idea to a VC behind me. And then it was like, okay, the market is saturated. We should do something else. But then I looked at all of the pain points of a DAO and what tooling is needed. And the only thing that I kind of didn't go into was the financing aspect of it, which is a little bit silly because in order to have any kind of organization, you need funding.
Yeah.
So, right. So then the whole idea was pivoted from a DAO tooling kit into a grants aggregator because there's so much funding like sitting around. And well, the idea is kind of like we can't resolve all of the issues of Web3 or like even the world, right, ourselves. So let's try and build tools to like give funding to people that need it, that can resolve these problems. But in terms of like the technology, one of the things that Ordum was meant to be is to utilize different tech stacks from like different parachains, because if we look at like reports from consulting agencies and stuff like that, they're saying that even TradFi will utilize this third generation of blockchains where each chain shares some kind of security from a relay chain and then has its own app chain. So probably the future of this will be utilizing different aspects from different app chains and making a dApp that sits between all of them.
Right.
Because choosing just one chain in general is just maximalism, and that's not how things are gonna work. Or like you try to fit things into a chain that are not necessarily meant for it, and then you have to build stuff from scratch, and it's like.
So I mean, this grant aggregator that you're building, really could be some solution towards the problems that we outlined like in the beginning of this panel, which is like where to start, right? And like funding literally is like a great starting point. Like, hey, if I have an idea, then maybe someone can support me to do this thing, right? So it's really awesome that you guys are building that, by the way. Like, cool, right?
Thank you.
And it's also about visibility, because like there's so much stuff that like it's just you have to dig, you have to be on the Kusumerian to like learn about stuff, and like you have to follow Limo on Twitter to like know about what's going on, right? But if you're not doing those things, if you're brand new, it is tricky, right? Right now it's still tricky. You have to really dig and get maybe a little bit out of your way. Curious just to like hear about like sort of what the vision is for this grants aggregator. Like, where are you guys at right now?
There's also probably should be saying this, but there's also a GIF which is one of my favorites recently of a dumpster fire floating in a flood. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. But
yes, okay, yeah.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because we've learned a lot on the way, because we started with a team that's all three of us are kind of more or less inexperienced. We were one of the first projects to pass OpenGov. But we've learned a lot on the way, and throughout just sharing our ideas, we kind of attracted quite good people that are helping us out now. And
So you've iterated a bunch, kind of figured out what not to do, like, but really focusing on the user experience, right? I've talked to one of your developers, and his background is building front-end apps.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate sort of like where now things are at?
Okay, so in terms of the UX, like currently, in order to submit a proposal on Polkadot or Kusama, people need to use Polkadot JS, and they have to input things like a block number when you should receive your funds, which nobody knows usually what it is. And then you need to select a track to which you're submitting your proposal to, depending on the amount of it. So simple. So one of the things that we've done is completely abstracted this stuff. So instead of inputting it like a block when your grant money should execute, you put in a date. Or instead of putting a KSM amount, you input a dollar amount, and it converts it to KSM at the current rate. We're also building a text editor. So because currently people are either using Google Docs or like, I don't know, Notion or HackMD or whatever to submit a proposal, which can obviously be manipulated because it's not.
Yeah, I mean, all the proposals are on Google Docs, actually.
Yeah, right.
Which is,
So, but then you can't track any of the changes in it, right?
Right.
So we're trying to, we're going to have our own text editor with a template in it. So when people do actually submit these proposals, there will be, and edit them, if they want to edit them, all of this will be tracked. So the community will be able to see how many edits there were, what they are. And then on top of that, we're also building a milestone reporting system that's based on Git. Because that's the accountability part, because people are complaining about there not being any accountability. Then some people have, like, I would dare to say, like, even centralized solutions, which might not be great. So we just want to provide these UIs, basically, because these are just UIs. They're not anything. I mean, surely this is all going to be managed by smart contracts, right, in the background. So it's all on chain and track, because currently it's mainly in the front end, right? So these are like some of the solutions that we're providing, and we want to build on top of that, enable people to pivot for like the existing voters to vote if that pivot should happen and things like that.
That's super awesome. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very cool to see like people building these products. Shifting a little bit to you, like you also have at the hackathon, you've been building with the Zeitgeist SDK.
Yes.
So can you like elaborate like on what really you built to share to the audience?
As I mentioned earlier, that the the gaming platform Zexify, it's basically how to integrate prediction market in any game.
Right.
For
So
example,
using Unity.
It's for Unity-based games for startup now,
Awesome.
for the current phase. But how to integrate the prediction market and Unity game? For example, think of it as a Counter-Strike game have a prediction market in it. So for starter, we are using Dungeon Crawler game for reference, and right now we're just building for Unity-based games, and we will go ahead in future with
That's
other
awesome.
things
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
So like I could be playing a game and my friends and I can like bet on who.
Yes, right.
Predict who's
Yeah,
gonna
the
win.
features are like betting,
Very cool.
bidding, escrow. So these are the features provided by the gaming SDK we are building right now.
And that's an awesome example of composing an application with some parachain service. Like for me,
That's right.
that narrative really needs to be the at the top level entry point of like, what are you building on Polkadot? Well, you know what? We can build applications as user experiences that use the services of the parachains.
That's correct.
In Polkadot. So super awesome. I'm sure like there's probably some questions in the audience. Like now that you know a little bit more about what my dear panelists Ayushi and Xylo are building, please, yeah, Dudley, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe just Ayushi, the question regarding like how did you choose to build this specific application on? Did you look at Zeitgeist, or were you just saw the hackathon and thought, okay, this is going to happen, or did you already have like an idea that you wanted to do this, and did you follow that journey into it, or is it something like, okay, they want this and I'm going to build it and it seems like a cool idea? Like maybe just a question like that.
Yeah. So basically, you wanted to know how we ended up building this thing, right? Okay. So
And maybe it was just like the documentation. I don't know, but yes.
no problem. So basically, one of our team member, he, as I mentioned, that he participated in Decoded hackathon. It happened in Denmark this year, and where he won, there he won hackathons and bounty prize, and that's where he met Zeitgeist people. Yeah. So then we participated in Relayers incubator program. It was organized by Angel Hack. Right, so we got selected in that team, and Zeitgeist, it's basically about prediction market, right?
Yeah, so I don't know if everyone is familiar with what Zeitgeist is. It's a parachain that facilitates prediction markets, right? And as a service, because maybe some people in the room don't know what Zeitgeist is. To interrupt you, sorry, but please continue, yeah.
So yeah, that's how we started this project. It's in active development right now, and some of our team members also went to Singapore, like just 1 week back for this meeting. It happened in Singapore, and there were so many teams from other companies as well, and they were also presenting their proposals and projects they're doing. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome, yeah. And was there a bounty or something that Zeitgeist Parachain was putting on together? Were they actively putting up a challenge in the hackathon?
Yes, they did. In Decoded Hackathon, there was a bounty from Zeitgeist, and the team member, his name is Divgun. He was supposed to come here, but his visa got delayed. I told you earlier he couldn't make it, so he won that prize, and that's how he met Zeitgeist people.
Right.
There, yeah.
And so this is kind of like where the things connect, right? Like
yeah,
you
exactly.
being like a builder, being like, hey, there's this opportunity to participate in a hackathon, and you know what? There's this cool challenge that interests me.
That's right.
Let's go and let's build something, you know?
Like you were asking, right, how to connect to the community. So these conferences are the best way, one of the best way to connect to the people, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Super interesting. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I think hackathons are actually a great way to get to know people and to test your skills and make something really quickly. My favorite one was Ethereum Berlin, because it was just interesting to just sit for a while and make stuff. But yeah, I think it's also a good way just to be introduced to tech stacks that you haven't been familiar before, just because it sounds interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Any questions from the audience that you guys maybe are interested in learning about? Yeah.
1-1. Yeah, thank you. For the Xylo, I have a question regarding the upcoming product. How are we planning to release this, the governance tool? Because I think there is a huge need in such, right? But at the same time, I don't want to wait for long. And it seems that the text component might postpone things for a lot if done properly, right? With all this change things, storage thing. Have you considered to kind of like make it in several iterations? Like, first of all, you will have the app which allows you to submit the proposals. And then you have the new version, which introduce also like the immutable text, well, not immutable, but more transparent, decentralized storage for the texts, and like doing it in iterations so that you can capture the market, you can, announce it, you can obtain the users, get some hype and all the stuff.
So actually, we're planning to be done by the end of the year, and we would have all of these features that are mentioned, but it would be only for Kusama to just see if everything's working. But we've already more or less finalized how all of this should look like and what should be used. We just have to rewrite certain things because it wasn't the best decision, because we have an adult now that checks up on us. But we should be ready to go by the end of the year with all these mentioned features working together. Yeah.
So you want to go all in one, but only for Kusama, right?
Yeah.
I see, I see. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Question.
Maybe just to add to this, carrying on this point, is like, did you ever consider using other technologies and putting it all on chain? So, for example, I know that's crazy to say at the blockchain conference, but there is like other forms of like. Okay, so for example, there's something called Nextcloud, which is a cloud infrastructure that allows you to spin up your own cloud, and having this maybe is also a good place to store information, and you can have the storage as well connected to IPFS. But you know, there's other forms of like, instead of just putting it as a smart contract, you could potentially do this.
Yeah.
And so have you ever thought about that as a solution, or just purely on chain?
In terms of, I mean, storage is somehow like even the elephant, to my understanding, the elephant in the room for blockchain still. Like in some cases, it might be a little bit unresolved. From my understanding, we're looking at using that actually. Which I'm not that familiar with, but that's something that's been discussed. Our first iteration was a combination of centralized database and storage, and then IPFS and Crust. So the way that it would work is that we would save the latest version of a proposal onto IPFS, and then once it's re-edited again, it would be the next version would be pushed again to it.
Cool. I think what's interesting also for you to share is that these challenges, and really to like be honest with like hurdles that you might have encountered and that you've surpassed, decisions that might have seemed like the right idea, but then you had to pivot. And if you like right now, you're actually using Fala, right, to do a lot of the community management like entry point. Is that correct? Like sort of.
Yeah.
The DAO contract.
Yeah, so...
Can you maybe elaborate on how you're using Fala, actually?
Yeah, so... sure. So the reason why we decided to use Fala is because we wanted to eventually enable people that do have DAOs to have on-chain project management so that they can eventually attach some kind of, not necessarily accountability system, but like some kind of contribution-backed governance model, perhaps. So that we can move away from the idea of one token, one vote, right? And there's maybe an alternative to that. But yeah, the idea would be to have all of these management systems, right, private, or maybe somebody applies for a Web3 Foundation grant and they want to. There's an option to keep also these applications private. So somebody might want to have this on chain, but only accessible by certain people. So we mainly opted in for Fala's smart contracts so that we can, well, two reasons. One of them is for the privacy capabilities, but the other one is to deploy our own oracles so that we can pull data from things like GitHub or like Notion or Snapshot, from where other people are putting their data for like governance stuff. So for example, Aave, right, uses... They have a Notion for all their grants, and we need to pull data from there in order to have that in our UI, so there's no friction. And then maybe if somebody wants to vote on a proposal over there, they'll be voting in our UI, but it's actually being done on Snapshot and like things like that.
That's really cool. That's yeah. Also breaking the barriers between like these different communities, because. I mean, let's be honest, like Cosmos, Ethereum, like Gnosis Chain, like all these communities have their own like funding and stuff. So like kind of wrapping up this like second part and as we wrap up this panel, like what I want to now go into is what are the opportunities that exist? Let's talk about like, you know, we mentioned hackathons. That was your entry point. Do you want to share a little bit about what the landscape is of current opportunities and where to get started to get funding for specific ideas?
Yeah, so if I'm correct, there's quite a few billion sitting in treasuries all around the Web3 industry, more than 10 billion, I'd argue, even at this market. So there's definitely all kinds of different opportunities everywhere. You know, some people...
So do you want to break them down for us?
Yeah.
Like, so, you know, we have the treasury, this pot of funds that is really meant for the prosperity of the Polkadot network, really, and getting funding from this treasury has its own system, but there's also other ways, like you can get a grant from. Kilt maybe has a grant, or who knows, right? Yeah, can you break it down for us? Like, what are the different entry points for getting funding, depending on what you want to build?
Yeah. So obviously, there's different parachains that have their own treasuries, like Kilt, right, or Fala as well.
Yeah, each parachain has, yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily.
Not all of them,
but some. Yeah. Like in Fala's case, they're asking for specific stuff that's basically infrastructure stuff that people can reuse and build on top of those things. But then these will vary per parachain. Like I don't know, Hydra has obviously rewards for bugs and stuff like that. Interlay does as well, I think. So then we go to Web3 Foundation, for an example. They fund based on milestones, and it works by forking a GitHub repo, but people can also do it privately. I don't know, maybe there's like somebody wants to have closed source. Actually, I don't know. I don't think they can have a closed source, but they can do it privately. It's just slower. With the Web3 Foundation, and then
yeah, the Web3 Foundation literally has a team of people that are reviewing proposals that come in, and then they kind of make sure that each milestone is executed.
Right.
And then and funding per milestone.
Which can be a good and a bad thing, but because maybe you have to pivot or something happens or you realize something and then you can't get paid for your milestone, right? But at the same time, you get experts that advise you. And they tell you this is good, this is bad, and so on. And then, and then the contrast to that, there's obviously the treasury. So from Kusama and Polkadot, which are mainly focused on infrastructure or events, for an example, where there's a bounty and it's specific for that. I think we're gonna see even more bounties get spun up, which are specific for certain things, I don't know, infrastructure, dev shops, smart contracts. I think it's needed to make it easier for people to apply for this kind of stuff. But I think if people have a good idea or a good solution for some problems, people are saying that OpenGov is pretty dramatic and this and that, but I do truly believe that if somebody has the best interest of the network and they want to build something that's really useful for the ecosystem, people are going to vote for it. And that's how it is.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah. Do you have any comments on opportunities and what sort of funding exists? Any comments on let's
talk about the opportunities. For example, the Heroes program. You guys have just started. It's one of the starting point, and it's a great way to it's a great opportunity actually. There are people who are learners and there are people who are mentors. So basically, what my understanding of Heroes program is it's a bridge between mentors and learners.
Yeah.
Right. I do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, very well put, and I'm glad you mentioned that because well, first of all, the Heroes program launched. That's at Parity DevRel team. That's kind of this new opportunity for developers that are interested in our ecosystem and who might not have the know-how, but there's other experienced devs that can help them and guide them.
Exactly.
And I think that's very complementary to what we're talking about on this end, which is well, if you're going for funding, you probably already have a team. You're you're not just a tinkerer that's just hey, I just want to build stuff and I don't really need to be submitting milestones because I'm building the next whatever a prediction market or the next grants aggregator or whatever. You might just be a tinkerer, and so I'm really glad that you brought it up and that we want to encourage developers to learn and also provide knowledge, right? So what are you most excited about the Heroes program?
I'm part of it. Yeah. So I'm very excited about it.
Where can you apply to the Heroes program?
It's on the Polkadot site, I guess.
I think it's on the Polkadot.network site.
Yeah. Yes, so you can find it here.
Yeah, awesome. That's again ties it together. Any questions and comments from the audience as we sort of wrap up the session today? Don't be shy. Again, you probably have experiences you might want to share or questions you want to ask Ayushi or Xylo. Dennis.
So since we already have the engine and the proposals
Can
and
you speak
money,
a little bit closer?
Sure.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
Since we have the referenda, since we have the developer teams and whatever, and if you take a close look at one of the talks of Mate from Polkadot and their model of development, it's pretty funny. They're just basically putting up the bounties in their GitHub and the issues and stuff being developed by random people, just picking up the grants and being paid in dots. We can pick up this kind of development model and just have a centralized spot for ideas, for bounties, whatever we need to have in the ecosystem. Like we need this common website, right? This candy store, for instance. We need this event to be up. We need like this something organized. We need like more people to do that, to do this. Like not necessarily technical stuff. Just the centralized place for bounties, for just for people to come up with the ideas, but not necessarily they are those who want to implement those.
Yeah. Yeah, so to kind of summarize what you're saying is that
the marketplace.
It would be awesome to have a place where people can like say, hey, I want to tinker and maybe build this thing and I'll get rewarded for it, or even like a place that would then help you on the journey. And I'm looking at you because if you want to build something and then continue building it and get funding and get maybe. You would probably want to know where to go, right, for that funding. That's why I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
But yeah, and absolutely, it would be awesome to have that place, sort of in this mindset of tinkerers, but also the future, like the next generation of parachains and stuff. So yeah, totally. Dudley, did you have something you wanted to add to that? Oh yeah. Just scratching your head. Okay, awesome. Yeah. Do you have any comments on like? Essentially like these entry points and where well actually tell me, like, what are you most excited to build and continue building in the Polkadot ecosystem? Any ideas you want to share with us?
Like, I that's why I joined Heroes program basically.
Yeah.
To learn new things. If I talk about myself, I joined this program as a learner because there are a lot of things in this ecosystem going on. And, my mentor used to give us an analogy that Polkadot is a group of islands and people can come and set up their own villages. So that's how we build the understanding of the system. So yes, I am excited to learn like new things in it. That's why we are doing Xylo and connecting to people, learn from them as well. It will be a good thing. So, yeah.
So you're building a village on the island of Zeitgeist, on the island of some other parachains, and really like building your own product and delivering your vision, whatever. I really like that analogy of
Thank you.
Villages and islands. Yeah. Set up your tent wherever, just whatever it is you're doing. What like value that you provide, take it from different islands, resources from islands. Anyone want to ask a question to our panelists as we sort of wrap up today? We've basically kind of gone over like entry points. We've gone over like then sharing their stories on like what they're building, right? And like do research. That's my takeaway. Like read about it and pursue what you're interested in doing. Like Ayushi, was interested in participating in this hackathon, and then you learned about Zeitgeist, and then you're building now a product that is just trying to like integrate that into Unity games. Pretty cool. You also have like your focus, and like that's what brought you here today. And like wrapping up opportunities and stuff. Do anyone know in the room what the next sort of hackathon is happening that we could maybe share to the audience today? Any hackathons within the ecosystem and some parachain teams participating? I'm not exactly sure. I think that the best way to check is to there's an events page on Polkadot.network. Totally, yeah. But yeah, like getting engaged. And come and talk to us at our DevRel booth. For those that are in real life at Sub0, just come chat with us, and you'll maybe learn a little more about what might interest you and what you want to keep building. I think that kind of wraps up the session for today. I was really happy to learn about what you're doing and what you're doing.
Thank
and
you.
Hopefully it was also valuable for you guys. So with that said, thank you so much for coming here. And yeah, want to add a little final thing? Like, thank you, a little wrap up?
Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. And one thing I also wanted to say is like, don't be afraid to wing it and just LFG sometimes, because if you don't ask, you don't get.
Totally.
That's correct. Thanks, you, Sacha, for having us here today. It was a great, discussion and great interacting with people. Thank you.
Awesome to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks.